everybody, and welcome to Run for Reviews, back another Japanese deep dive into some more Takashi Ishii's wonderful collaboration with Noboru Tanaka in this entry for the next Angel Guts movie, which is called Nami, released in 1979, a part of the wonderful Third Window Films release on the 23rd of February 2026, the Angel Guts collection, which features all the films apart from the initial first entry, which was High School Co-ed, which has nothing to do with the man in question himself. This film was released in the exact same year as the previous Angel Gut films, Red Classroom, in 1979. So you got two separate directors adapting two separate scripts from the same writer, which is quite interesting. And I guess it kind of keeps that kind of good word of mouth going. It kind of keeps excitement, being the fact that these films were cinema exclusives. Expanding upon the conversation I've had a few times on this channel now, and many other Japanese films, and especially with Hong Kong as well, in terms of doing the more kind of explicit pink genre Romo porno, kind of borderline art house type movies in cinemas, and kind of getting people away from their television sets and going to pay money for the cinema to go and watch something you would not see on TV. One of the great extras on this edition, which I'll dive into in the special feature section, is talking about that exact same argument in terms of art house versus exploitation and the difference between the two and how that applies to the Angel Gut films, which I thought was a very, very good extra. And I thought it was a good little insight into a perspective essentially on these kind of movies, you know, because they can be seen in one or two ways, in terms of just pure trash, disposable films, very tasteless, or expressive art house stylized films that cater to a very specific criteria, which is the exact conversation explorative journey that's been going on with this director slash writer and his filmographies up to this point. The director for this one, Noboru Tanaka, I've actually been quite curious about a couple of his films on his kind of filmography, including The Village of the Doom, I believe, which looks pretty good based on a true story, just have a Blu-ray release, and there's a couple of other certain random ones that I've been like, oh, I've been quite curious to try and track that down, see if I can find access to it. Hopefully a few more of his movies might get Blu-ray or kind of high definition releases. I think a couple do actually have 88 film releases in terms of the kind of the Romo porno genre, which he did quite a few films from his IMDb listing. So without further ado, let's dive into Angel Guts, the second entry, disc 2 on the edition, Nami, released in 1979. Now, with disc 2 on this edition, Nami is definitely a big step up from the previous one. I quite enjoyed Red Classroom. I've done a review on that already. Despite some sluggish kind of pacing and some slightly unlikable characters in the background, I thought it was quite a good one for an hour and 15. I quite enjoyed my time with it. Not a perfect film by any means, but definitely made an impact. Definitely was a good, strong point to start this collection with. And as mentioned in that review, this one, my God, turns it up to 11. This one feels a lot more established. It feels a lot more confident in itself. It feels like a proper kind of going into madness, you know, stepping into madness, art house, exploitation film that is under the bandwagon of a Romo porno film. Kind of does remind me a little bit of Red Flash, journalist, and she does kind of articles on certain type of kind of real life stories. The popular kind of angle that she's going with and kind of exploring to the detriment of herself and to the victims is people who have been sexually assaulted, raped essentially. And it is very kind of alarming that she gets so involved in it to the point where it becomes psychologically kind of damaging to her. 8mm kind of vibes a little bit, you know, similar to the kinds of the Nicolas Cage film where he's trying to find what happened to this girl. There's a snuff film involved and he's diving into material and people and world that he just should not be involved in. And this Nami character, for some reason or another, is infatuated, is sexually charged, actually just so kind of almost jealous in a weird way. It's weird to say, where she's basically finding these kind of women that have been assaulted. And the film opens with an assault straight off the bat, and we see various kind of different women throughout the film in various kind of scenes, them being kind of assaulted by men, kind of pleasuring herself in the shower and She's kind of like, you go into these kind of like very specific kind of strip clubs, and they're doing these kind of like art house kind of, kind of porno type shows kind of thing. And she's trying to find a lead, a big story leading into something quite huge. And she uncovers something a little darker than she expected. And she gets herself way over her head very fast into the film. And she gets warned a few times, and few of her peers are also kind of giving her warning. And she's a very good journalist, and I like that first initial kind of aspect of the film, where this is again a very detriment to her character and to where the rest of the film goes, where she kind of crosses paths with people that she probably shouldn't have, and she meets different types of victims at different stages, different mental stages on their life. And there definitely gets a little bit crazier, definitely gets a bit wilder. And it has some sequences in the film which are absolutely fantastic in terms of just almost like a dream state, almost borderline supernatural. I think the soundtrack, the Foley work in this, I think is really on point. They're definitely trying to make it feel unworldly, unsettling in terms of how certain kind of pieces are used within certain scenes. Especially with our main character, which is stepping in to a very dark place, and it becomes more of a psychological dreamscape kind of world where she kind of, there's a great sequence where she basically, we see multiple times in the film, this kind of news agent type of building, office kind of building, and it gets to a point where she's basically reenacting some of these scenes that she's been writing about in front of her colleagues, in front of her peers, and we get this kind of like really big orange kind of glow, and it's almost like another alternative world. It's almost like a mental mind palace kind of world where she's breaking down, losing herself, and it gets pretty wild within the third act of the film when he goes to the hospital. We get to introduce the kind of the Mad Doctor character, and it gets a little bit violent as well. Something I mentioned in my previous video in terms of Red Classroom, where they did a fantasy kind of setup kind of scenario. In this one, they actually did do it in a more cinematic, much more crueler, very creepy way, and it gets pretty wild in terms of that sequence. And again, I think this one definitely is very uncomfortable. It definitely is not an easy one to watch in terms of the scenes that we do see with these kind of victims. I think this one, much like the first entry in this collection in terms of Red Classroom, that was about a woman taking back some form of control in a very damaging way. I'll leave it to the rest of the film for that. This one, I think, is the idea of the mind, the soul, the spirit, I guess, and curiosity, and kind of stepping into something that is going to destroy you and break you down internally, mentally, and how it affects both men and women in the film, because it definitely is a dual kind of piece. So I won't say too much in terms of major spoilers, but it definitely gets pretty wild and very, very surreal. It gets very stylized, and I think it has some very unique sequences, which I think is very similar to something like Possession, almost in a weird way. There's some kind of Possession kind of like moments in there. So yeah, in terms of Nami, I definitely would say this one's not for the faint of hearted. It is definitely a very hard one to watch. It has some very explicit scenes, some very harsh scenes in terms of not just the sex, but also the violence. It has a character which is borderline kind of unlikable, it gets a bit frustrating, but you get invested in that kind of drama, which is great. In terms of the special features for Disc 2, we have a video essay by James Bowman, which is a really fantastic little extra on the edition, 17 minutes long roughly, and it basically talks about the Angel Gut kind of series. Is it art house or exploitation? And it really dives into the movies themselves. It doesn't give too many spoilers away from the other kind of entries. If you're watching it one by one, it kind of shows clips here and there, but doesn't kind of flat out ruin what those other films are. But essentially the purpose of this video is to explore either are these films tasteless, worthless, pink Romo porno films that you should not watch or entertain, or are these art house films by imaginative, visionary directors, writers, fantastic performances? Are these really explorative, really groundbreaking, interesting, creative films in a time, in a place where these were the kind of the access to make these types of films? Because again, TV was very popular. We've got not many people going to the cinemas. What are you getting in the cinemas that you cannot get from home? And this was the outlet, and this was available for directors and writers to get on board with. And if that is your kind of path and kind of entry into cinema, into kind of, filmmaking and being creative, imaginative, and you're getting free range to do whatever you want as long as you hit certain criteria. Really enjoy this extra, and I definitely recommend watching this on disc 2 on the edition. We also have a brand new audio commentary by Jasper Sharp, similar to what he did with the disc 1. Again, great insight, lots of interesting information in terms of the production, the director, people involved. And lastly, we have a 40-minute extra with the director himself, talking about his entire process, his kind of origin points with the studio, working with some of the biggest and best directors in the time from the 60s, 70s onwards, learning from their craft, learning more about himself, talking about his kind of entry point and basically wanted to be a poet, wanted to make poems, and he basically kind of translated his love and passion for poems into frames, into kind of cinema, and to kind of do something artistic and something creative and imaginative, very similar to Takashi Ishii in terms of his kind of graphic novels, his manga stuff. So that's been my thoughts and impressions on Angel Guts Nami, released in 1979. What are your thoughts and impressions of the film? I'd love to know your thoughts on your favorite of the Angel Gut films, which is your weakest or worst entry. Please comment down below. So in time, guys, I'm for reviews. Signing out.